And welcome to a Fantasy Fan Sportscast, where we talk fantasy sports from a fan's point of view. I'm Easy Kill. I'm your fan. My co-host, the expert, Chris Allen from ffcouchcoach.com. Chris, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine now. We're on the air. This is the first time we're going live on YouTube. It may or may not work. I think it's working. It says we're live. We're broadcasting.
Only one way to find out. We'll see on YouTube later.
That's right. We'll see on YouTube. I just always want to say the comments here. If you click on, you ever seen the video? They're always pointing places. And whenever I'm watching, I never see shit. I just see people going and just click on this.
You don't know what they're pointing at.
Right. Yeah. I don't get that. So people watching us, I don't give a shit what you click on. We're just here. We're maybe on. We're going to talk some fantasy sports. We're going to have a good time. We're live on Spreaker. You go Spreaker.com, click on a fantasy fan. In the search, you'll find us, and we're there. So, that's it. People on YouTube are just finding us. Like I said, we just talk fantasy sports the way fans would. I'm not a player person. I don't know all the, I don't know all the ins and outs and, throwing angles and all that. Chris is more involved in that stuff and the stats and all that. So really, right, Chris, here we just kind of talk about crazy things that maybe fans might want to hear about and talk about.
Absolutely. And I think that's the whole point, is that I think the more that we get a chance to talk about some of these players and some of their situations, and I mean, we're still a couple of weeks out from even really understanding where the teams are at, even though we'll see a couple of teams play here within the next couple of days. But I still think there's some time that we need to use in order to figure out where we're at before the fantasy season really gets underway.
Right. And tonight, our topic, anyone who's listened to our show, we've been doing it. It's hard to believe, over almost 4 months. We've been doing it just on Spreaker. Has been. We've been doing it. Yeah. We kind of have topics. The odds are we do or don't stay on them. That's the problem. Tonight, the show title similar is just no, yes, yes, yes. The early do's and don'ts of fantasy football. We're going to hear a little bit, talk about, the things you're really set on doing this time of year to prepare, and the things you're definitely not on, meaning just things a waste of time or you don't need to do. So those give you a few minutes in your head. That's what we're going to kind of be talking about later. What would you tell a new person that, hey, this is stuff you should be doing now. This is stuff you definitely shouldn't be now, regardless what you're hearing from. I don't have to say air quotes anymore if we're actually on video, right?
Yeah, everybody can see the air quotes.
Right. So right. You've never seen my air quotes, have you?
No.
So if you, we'll get to that topic later and go there. But first, let's want to ask you camp news. I'll always start with you because you're a little more newsy than me. I've had one of those weeks at work here the last few days, so I haven't paid attention to a lot as far as listening to some of the live stuff. The biggest thing, I guess, is right now a lot of big signings the last couple days is one thing. The second thing is, I guess it's kind of right now as far as main fantasy players, I haven't heard or seen any major injuries. There's been some lineman issues that might have a fantasy factor, but I'll start with you. What's your first fantasy camp news tidbit that you might want to talk about?
I would say two things really in terms of injuries that folks should be looking out for right now. The first is the mysterious situation regarding Rashard Matthews, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. It was started to get reported about a couple of months ago where he was not in training camp, or in OTAs rather, with an undisclosed injury. And everybody kind of sort of just pushed to the side and thought that, well, he's been on the team for a while, so it's not really a big deal that he's not there and not practicing and whatnot. But now we're in training camp. He hasn't been seen, and he's also been put on the PUP list, unable to perform list, with an undisclosed injury as well. Now, Mike Vrabel, head coach for the Tennessee Titans, he comes from the Belichick coaching tree, and he knows the rules, or he plays the rules to the letter. And the Tennessee Titans, they're not obligated to tell the league what his injury actually is so that the public can get a diagnosis and other teams can figure out how long he may or may not be out, I believe until the very first week of the actual season. So they have time. So we don't know. And the only people that really know at this point is the team and Rashard Matthews. So for the time being, it's all been Corey Davis, it's been Taywan Taylor, it's been Delaney Walker, and that's about all we know. So that's one situation. The second situation, which actually started developing earlier today, was that Doug Baldwin was seen in a wrap along his knee yesterday during practice, and everybody thought that he was just having a vet day and whatnot. But actually, reports came out earlier today. Pete Carroll was saying that Doug has some sort of knee issue. It's something that is going to keep him out of practice for the next 2 to 3 weeks with some knee soreness. And we don't necessarily know, again, what type of knee injury it is, if it's any sort of ligament damage or anything like that. So that is something that drafters are going to have to be aware of. If he's back and available, third week of preseason, and he's running around and playing with the team, then all's well. But if he's held out into the very first week of the season, I believe that's something that folks should maybe be aware of, or at least watch intently as the
especially people drafted now. I mean,
right, absolutely, yeah. That for me. I'm fading him for the time being, but still, it's going to be a kind of scary or I guess a hairy situation for folks to watch out for.
Right. Okay. Some of the linemen that have got hurt, and I guess the first one I recall is the San Diego. Didn't they have a lineman issue? Yep. And to me, that's kind of still a little questionable running game, maybe. What do we, because I think I don't think he's out for the year, possibly, but it's going to be a while, correct? So what does that do fantasy wise for someone drafted now? If you're looking at San Diego players.
It doesn't do too much for me, especially considering that Melvin Gordon, he's used in both the running and passing game. And while I don't believe that the injury was serious, and nor was it to one of the interior linemen so that he can run on the inside, I do think that still Melvin Gordon can make his bones in the passing game, so much so that I don't think any production lost is going to be a significant amount. I mean, if you're playing in a PPR league, he should be able to make that up. Standard league, it might be something to watch out for, but I wouldn't be changing my ranks just yet. But for the other players, Phillip Rivers, he's been able to move around quite a bit, even though he's getting up there in age. Keenan Allen, any of the other ancillary passing weapons, I think everybody else should be fairly set at this moment. But if the injuries continue to come, as they have, because they've already lost at least one of their starting cornerbacks, I believe another one actually went down earlier today. It looks like injuries are the Chargers team is bereft with injuries at the moment, and we haven't even gotten to the preseason yet. It's something to watch, but at this point, I'm not changing my rankings just yet, but I'm on the verge of it.
Okay. News I knew today that I thought was interesting is, and only interested because of where it's at. And what about Eric Decker trying out for the Patriots?
It seemed like that was a logical fit. Just given the fact that they're currently dealing with some injuries as well. I mean, Julian Edelman's already going to be out for the first 4 weeks, and Jordan Matthews is already banged up, considering he's also one of the oft-injured players that really we want to believe in the hype, we want to believe in the athleticism, but for some reason he just can't seem to stay on the field. So it makes sense that they would bring in somebody like Decker. I would assume that Decker was the preferred player over somebody like Dez Bryant, who could also play in the slot. So again, it makes sense, but I'm not hanging my hat on it just yet, because I do think that the team would rather see where Decker's at athletically and physically, given his age. But I don't think there's going to be any imminent signing until they figure out more of what's going on with their current group of receivers. So I would say that keep them on on your quick dial, or quick.
Well, right. But the issue is that we all know is that the Patriots have taken old, worn out players before and turned them into fantasy, value. I mean, this is not the first time that maybe something like that. Now, he obviously hasn't signed, so that's still thing. And I'm guessing this would be a good signing for him also. I mean,
oh yeah, because I don't think that there were any other teams that were going to be knocking down his door for his services. But it does make me wonder about the other players that are currently on the team if they do wind up signing him.
Right.
Because
I guess if anything, I would assume if anything, it'd be those first 4 weeks, right? I mean, those first 4 weeks. I mean, I'm one of those people, that have moved up some of their other wide receivers in my head, or, just like, if I can get a good value and really use them up those first 4 weeks and then hope, maybe trade or do something like that. But it's even like Hogan. Is Hogan, let's say they sign Decker, is Hogan a little less valuable?
No, I don't think so, because it changes it. For Chris Hogan particularly, it doesn't change how he'll be used. He can be used in the slot. He can also be used outside. Decker, at his age, I would assume that, and also his usage when he was in Tennessee, he was primarily a slot guy. So if anything, I would think that it would just be Decker primarily in the slot until Julian Edelman comes back. And then assuming Edelman comes back fully healthy and ready to go, then he would be the one that would take over the slot duties, with Jordan Matthews assisting if he's available. Until we know the severity of Jordan Matthews' injury, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion, but I would say that that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Okay, I would agree. I just thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Anytime you can get somebody that's attached to the Patriots, it's interesting.
Oh, I agree, and especially if it's someone you can get
off the waiver wire, almost
off the waiver wire, or very late in a draft.
Absolutely.
I mean, if he signs now, it is definitely somebody, that at the end of the draft, you take a roll on. So, Michael Floyd, I was a Michael Floyd fan a few years back, signing with the Patriot or the Saints. Again, I don't know. I guess my issue with that is the Saints have some wide receivers. Why did they need this? Seems like an odd one to me, but at the same time, he could affect people. He's got speed. He has basic skills, but he can just take off and go downfield.
I know, and I think for a lot of fantasy owners, like, we do hang on to the last thing that we saw a player do. And when Michael Floyd was in Minnesota, it wasn't all that great. I mean, he had the alcoholism issue and whatnot, so a lot of fantasy owners have probably kicked him to the curb and don't want to incur that risk by putting him on his team. But now, if we go back to when he was in Arizona, that he was almost, I wouldn't say more important than Larry Fitzgerald, but in a number of games, he was actually outproducing Larry Fitzgerald, outproducing John Brown in his heyday in the 2014, 2015, season when Carson Palmer was just lighting up the air with deep balls. Michael Floyd was able to actually make some production. He's still a good athlete. So now I do think that I agree with you, though, Mark, that the signing is somewhat odd considering the number of receivers that they have. I would say that, if anything, this might be another one of those, they just want to pick up the player, see what they have. And in all honesty, I would not be surprised at all if he winds up getting cut by the end of the preseason.
Right.
Because I just think that they have enough with rookies.
Who was the other guy? They signed someone else, though. Didn't they sign someone else in the preseason that's I cannot think of a name. But
not that I can recall.
Yeah, I thought the Patriots did sign another kind of speedy guy. Or was that maybe last year? Or the Saints. I'll look it up.
Patriots, or not the Patriots.
The Saints.
The Saints. They picked up. Now you got me messed up. I know the Saints. They had signed Traquan Smith. That was one of their rookies that they picked up. But I can also Cameron Meredith was their signing from the Bears. They picked him up in free agency.
Cameron Meredith. Primarily that's what I'm talking. Guy. I mean, that's my point. Cameron Meredith and Michael Floyd to me are similar a little bit. Which I thought made it odd. And Cameron Meredith is also someone at the bottom of my draft list that, who knows? He could be the number 2 there. Things could happen. And if Thomas would go down, before the Floyd signing, I mean, if Thomas, would have any problems or issues, I mean, I would assume he'd be one of the players that they would go or, be looking at a little bit more.
It's entirely possible. But again, I think the passing game for New Orleans I wouldn't say is
that's
secondary,
true. It's changed.
But it's changed. It definitely has changed. Yeah, assuming that we get through the first 4 weeks during Ingram's suspension, there is nothing to suggest that they won't go back to the boom and zoom, rhythm and boom that you want to have for Ingram and Kamara after he returns.
Right.
I mean, Ingram is 29. This is the last year of his deal. I mean, I can totally see them using up everything that they have with Ingram and then just kicking him to the curb after this year's over. So I would think that this year is going to be a repeat.
And both of these now again, I'm saying Decker to me is not a signing, but I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. I just can't imagine Decker not signing there for even a minimum. But let's say if he does sign these two things, does it bump the quarterbacks for you at all? Breeze or Brady. Brady has a lot of weapons, and other than Gronk, Brady's the only other Patriot I want on my team. I'm just not willing to take him that high because that offense scores a lot of points, and Brady, the more targets he has, maybe he's bad for fantasy as far as all those targets go, but it sure puts an upside to him. So and the same with Breeze. If he's got a lot of targets, and you don't have Ingram early on, do you think they'll throw more? So that's the question. Both quarterbacks, does it bump them at all, or just kind of? I can't imagine it hurting them. But what's your opinion?
I don't think it really changes much in terms of my outlook for either of the quarterbacks. Brady's going to be Brady. He's going to continue to pass the ball when he needs to and spread it around when he needs to. So I don't think it would increase his production, but it does ease my mind in terms of the continuity of high-end wide receiver production that he could have, because somebody like Decker, I think, would be huge for him if Edelman goes down, if not Julian Edelman, if Jordan Matthews goes down, if Chris Hogan goes down, then they have somebody waiting in the depths other than Philip Dorsett, who we haven't seen produce. Right. I mean, somebody like that, or Kenny Britt, who, we've left for dead a couple of years ago. I think that having somebody like Decker there, it eases my mind in terms of if he can continue to produce if some of those players were to go down. Same thing like Drew Brees. If he has somebody like Malcolm Floyd down there with him, again, if Michael Thomas were to go down, if Cameron Meredith's injury is still bothering him, they still have a continuity in the talent around them in order to have them continue to produce at a high level.
I agree. I think so. Any other injuries or any other signings or camp news then that you want to get into before we move on?
I would say that the one thing that I'm trying to get a handle on, but I haven't really heard too much else on at the moment, is it sounds like there's an issue surrounding Kareem Hunt. There have been rumors circulating that there's a suspension looming over him for a body cam tape or footage that came out over the past couple of weeks from an arrest that actually happened, I think, a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. So I would say watch for that. And also from the reports I've been reading, he's also been nursing a hamstring injury, and Spencer Ware has been taking over the first team reps.
Right.
Spencer Ware is back. He's healthy.
Spencer Ware's another one of those I have down way on my list. Would have no problem keeping him on the, the bottom of a draft list.
Right.
Because he wasn't healthy when Hunt had that year. He had no competition. So we still don't know how they're going to use both of them.
Exactly. Well, not just both of them. They have Kareem Hunt, they have Spencer Ware, they have Charkandrick West, they have Kerwin Williams, they have Damian Williams. They have 5 running backs currently on their roster. And now it just seems odd to me that a team that has the running back that had the rushing title from the 2017 season not only signed 1 running back, but they signed an additional running back on top of that when they knew that their goal line banger back was coming back from an injury from the previous season.
So do you think maybe some of that is that they had pre-knowledge of some of this?
It's entirely possible, or they might just have some pessimism in Kareem Hunt's ability to shoulder the load.
Pessimism. Thank you.
It's entirely possible. I don't know, but
the word of the day. It's the word of the day. Easy likes to keep it easy, and now I had to hear pessimism. So thank you.
Yeah, because it's just odd to me, because if you look at if you look at the Saints, look at the Saints. Did the Saints go out and sign a big name running back after Ingram got put on suspension? No. Did the Giants go out and sign another running back in order to also work with Saquon Barkley?
No, but that being said, I know you named two, but even those two have other guys, that are in camp. But more and more teams, as running backs are becoming less expensive, they are keeping more around, and moving them to practice squads and doing stuff, because I think they're realizing that. I think teams now are like, hey, we're going to run them in the ground, and if something happens, we got a next guy up. That next guy up in the running back philosophy. I get it. I mean, maybe, but I don't think, I guess in my head, I don't think that necessarily, it's back to the Browns, why get high, then sign people, which is back to the last bit of news I had was the Des Bryant thing. The rumors is getting stronger that about maybe a Browns thing, which is the same thing. You have, a couple of different situations there with players that may or may not be available. So that's a pretty big deal. The other big deal is this new, helmet thing. Players can get penalized and things like that. And the concussions, to me, especially in running backs, you can lose a running back for a couple of weeks now, with just one hit in a game. So you have to have, unfortunately, it kills fantasy, but in real football now, you got to have a couple of them. I mean, I just think that's the way it's going.
Right. And I absolutely agree. And I think our players have already started to speak out about the new rule in terms of looking for not necessarily a way to get around it, but other ways that they continue to produce the running or continue with their particular running style, such that they're not going to get fined or penalized or possibly tossed out of a game, depending on the level of infraction that they might have while they're playing on the field.
Right. So, I mean, those are just things as fantasy people this time of year, have to get into. And when we get to our no's, and yes, we'll maybe get into that, how much of this talk you listen to. The last thing before we get into our main topic for a few minutes is Terrell Owens and the Hall of Fame ceremony. Do you care? Does it matter to you? Do you watch anyway? Is this just a way for Terrell to, his last chance of sticking his finger in the air? What's your opinion, or do you even care?
50% don't care, and 50% I do think that it's just his way of, throwing up the middle finger to the league on his way out. I think he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame much earlier.
Has anyone else that had the ability to be there not been there?
Not that I can think of. I believe it's the first time that anybody that's been inducted into the Hall of Fame has declined to be there. I mean, for personal reasons, right? If somebody was sick and or dying or whatever. But I think that's the first time somebody has actually declined to go to the ceremony. And
I missed it, and I apologize. I listened to a lot of stuff, so I credit whoever brought it to my attention. And that's on the NFL Network right now. One of their advertising for the big Hall of Fame stuff this week. At the very end, they play the clip of Bettis saying, he just says there's no better place to be this weekend than the Hall of Fame. This guy took that like that's like, and then the commercial stops. Almost like was that last sentence added to more or less tell TL or TO that, hey, you know what, you should be here. There's no better place to be, for the Hall of Fame weekend than at the Hall of Fame. I thought that was interesting. Now I see that commercial every time. That's all I wait for. I wait for the last line when Jerome Bettis says there's no better place to be than here at the Hall of Fame. So I don't know. I was never I didn't play fantasy football when Mr. Owens was in the league. So I didn't care about him, didn't follow him a whole lot. So, I knew he was a good player. That's not the point. And, but I enjoyed watching him with Philadelphia. That being said, do we know is he going in as an Eagle? Is he going in as a 49er? I would assume 49ers or Eagles would be the two. 49ers for longevity and the Eagles for accomplishments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I do believe he's going in as a 49er. Check me on that. But I thought he was being inducted as a 49er.
All right. Well, people will check us if they want. We're not.
For sure.
What do we got to lose if someone questions our,
Oh, hey, knowledge? If I'm wrong, I'll fully admit that I'm wrong.
I give you that. I give you that. And which will remind me, I do under our yeses, I have a few podcasts and one's entertaining. And I'll just put it out there right now because it's a fantasy podcast that I listen to, but it is more entertaining. And I don't know what's on your podcast list, but I Am Rappaport. Have you ever listened to it? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I have not. I have not.
He is an actor, and I have lost the first name. He's been in a lot of movies. He's an actor that if you saw, you would know him. But he is a fantasy in I don't have to do air quotes, in quotes.
Right.
He is a fantasy expert. He plays a lot of fantasy, he plays in a lot of celebrity leagues. And his podcast is really just entertaining because he's hysterical. I recommend it. Anybody that just has a fantasy podcast playlist, stick it on there and just, listen to his stuff. Because, it just kind of breaks up the monotony of stats and players and all that. But he comes right out and says, this is a non-factual podcast. I will say a lot of stuff that's not facts. So don't check me because I don't care if you tell me I'm wrong or not. And it's just hysterical because he'll tell you he's right, but then he does always say, but hey, those are stats. I'm not a stats guy. Right. I'm not a stats guy. So he's pretty. Ian Rappaport. Ian Rappaport is the football analyst. This is
right.
Michael Rappaport. Thank you.
Yeah.
And he's in a couple movies I really enjoy. He's in a few TV shows, but his podcast. He is hysterical. So,
yeah.
All right, that'll get us started in our do's and our don'ts. And I'm doing this for the new fantasy people. Me and Chris have been doing this a while, and we're a little into it. And I think if you're a new player, there's just things that people, kind of get. How do I say this? There's things that people get hung up on that doesn't matter. There's also things that people think, they don't need to be doing, and you should be doing them. So, and again, we always do it this way. The topic I kind of come up with, and obviously I have time to put a few things in my head, but I like because I'm the fan and you're the expert. The expert shouldn't have to plan all day to give me some of his do's and don'ts. You should have an idea. So, this time of the season, give me, I'll let you start with one of each. Give me one of your major do's and one of your major don'ts. And this is very broad, go wherever you want to go.
Okay.
But for a fantasy player right now, give me one of your do's and give me one of your don'ts that might help a new player or really any player.
I would say do's. Wait until your last couple of rounds to draft. If you do have defenses and kickers, wait until the last couple of rounds to draft a defense and a kicker. I know a lot of folks are going to be jumping all over the Philadelphia Eagles, Jacksonville Jaguars, Minnesota Vikings in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. But if you look statistically over a number of years, repeatability for defensive units to hit the same numbers that they did over time is actually very rare and almost statistically impossible for them to repeat. So it's almost easier for you to look at the general matchups for week one and then just play the matchups and try and stream the position. So that would be a do for me. A don't for me is don't draft a quarterback early. I know that a lot of folks they're hyped over Aaron Rodgers returning. They're hyped over Deshaun Watson coming back. Just wait. Again, when it comes to the positional scarcity and opportunity cost, it is much more advantageous for you as a drafter to use that 5th round pick or that 6th round pick or even sometimes that 7th round pick in order to grab a 3rd wide receiver, 3rd running back, or even possibly a tight end if you're getting into the 7th round. That opportunity cost can wind up costing you pretty much, pretty dearly if your quarterback were to go down, i.e. Aaron Rodgers last season, i.e. Deshaun Watson last season, even though most folks wound up picking him off the waiver wire since he didn't start week one. But in some of those situations, it is almost better for you to look at a streaming type situation in order to better your team. So those would be my do's and don'ts.
All right. Hey, those are your do's and your don'ts, so I'm not going to question them.
Yeah, you do you.
But you know me. why would I not question your do's and your don'ts? I do. I believe in both, but I'm a little, and you'll have a chance to do on mine, but how do I want to say this? The defense and the kicker. First of all, both things you just said, everyone says, all the experts say that. So, but again, they're talking to experts in expert leagues. So yes, let everyone pick the better ones early. But at the same time, in home leagues, I always make a list of 5 to 10 players that I know won't get drafted, that I will have no problem being on my team.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no problem bumping up. And when I mean bump up, people, I'm talking a round or two, meaning if you're in an 18-round draft and you want to take, and I agree with Chris, you don't have to have the top, like this year, Baltimore's going a little later as defenses go, meaning they're not one of the tops. But if I can take Baltimore, let's say in the 15th or the 16th, I will do that. If I can get, one of the better kickers on an offense that's going to score a lot of points in those early rounds or in the late early rounds. I'm not saying do this in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, but in the 14th, 15th, 16th, I have no problem. And in a lot of cases, I also look at that, which I have in Baltimore. Baltimore has a very late, bye week. So it's a defensive that could be above average. They have a late bye. So I have no problem with someone bumping up a few picks to get an above average defense or kicker, because I always know I got a list of 5 guys I'm going to get. Meaning, I'm going to get these regardless if I take them in the 15th or 16th, and then get my kicker and punter in the last, or kicker and defense in the last 2. I don't need to do that. I can bump up 1 or 2 knowing I'm going to get these other 3 guys. Back to, it's back to the guys we talked about earlier. You know what? I would have no problem if I got Baltimore in the 14th or 15th and got Decker in my 18th pick. That's the way I look at it. I get it. I hear it a lot. And I agree, in expert leagues where everyone has those 10 guys that might not be the same, but in home leagues, those 1 or 2 picks, because they're players you're going to drop anyway and play on waivers. Waivers are a little easier sometimes in home leagues. So that's my opinion on that. The quarterback I get, but my thing on that is join leagues where there's 2 quarterbacks.
No, that'd be much better.
That altogether.
Yes.
2 quarterbacks.
Yes.
My first big do for new players is get a Twitter account. I'm going to do this a little different than Chris. Just get a Twitter account. If you're going to play fantasy football, get a Twitter account. And I'm not saying this to follow me, but if the first person you follow is a fantasy fan, which is my Twitter handle, then look at all the people I follow and follow them. They're fantasy experts. That's what helps me. So get a Twitter account. Yes, you don't have to follow your kids, your grandma, your mom. You know what? None of that. But get a Twitter account. Set it up with a lot of your fantasy experts. There's weather people, fantasy weather people, which I know you're involved in. There's, there's Sunday morning. You will get more tweets in the, from, once 11 o'clock hits, you will get all these starts. You cannot get enough quick, instant information than if your Twitter account is set up and you have good quality Twitter people. The second, what I'm going to say is part B to that is then set up a TweetDeck account where you can modify what you see on a screen so you don't miss stuff. I'll get a link for next week and I'll put that out there. There's a link of a couple fantasy people that tell you how to set up specifically your TweetDeck account to follow your fantasy people. You get you have your fantasy go-to people and you just categorize the people you're following. So the news you're getting is very good, very up to date. I believe that's one of the, if this is your first year to play fantasy, the best thing you can do is get a Twitter account, set it up properly. That's kind of, on that end, as far as my first don't would be, don't listen to everything you hear this time of year, from experts to podcasters to coaches to everybody. This is a time of year where everyone's guessing. Everyone's doing a lot of things. You know what? Put some things in the back of your head, maybe. But, I've been with people that, they pay attention right now because they're all excited. Then they kind of fall asleep for 3 weeks. Then they go in their draft room and they're picking someone they didn't even realize was, suspended. You know what? This information this time of year is not the stuff you take, for granted. It's not the stuff you wrap and put under the tree. So, just this time of year, start funneling the information you're getting. And again, I say it with everybody, the podcasters, the sports people, the news, the NFL channel. I don't care who you listen to right now. They're just trying to get eyeballs. And a lot of what you're hearing is fluffy. So, that would be my don't for this time of year. So that's my first do and my first don't, because I think as a new player, those are pretty important.
I would have to agree with the first one with your do for setting up a Twitter account, especially TweetDeck. That's actually what I have running right now, where I have just a main Twitter feed where I have my most analysts, everyone from Schefter, TMR, all the normal folks,
right,
down to some of the guys that work for sites like myself and all that, projectionists, things of that nature. But in a completely separate column, I have just news where I follow beat writers. I follow folks that work for teams. Follow folks that work for like NFL Network, where all their job is to report the news. I don't want to hear, and I 100% agree with you, I don't want to hear about, well, this could be the year that Alex Smith takes a team to the playoffs and all this other stuff. Like, I don't care about that stuff right now. The things that I want to hear about injuries, and I want to hear who's working with the first team offense. Those are the only two things that really matter right now. I've tried to filter out all that extra stuff to the point where that's all the information that I really want to take in. Of course, I like seeing projections. I like hearing about them, but I try not to take them too much to heart. Unless you're a projectionist, quote unquote, and see, I can do that too. See, I do the quote unquote.
Good. You're learning.
Unless you're a projectionist that has done it for a while and might have awards for doing so, like John Paulson for 4for4, who's been one of the most accurate rankers for 4 or 5 years running now. Folks like that who that you have a trusted source. I might refer to some of their rankings, but 100% agree with you on that. And then also on your don't, I do like that. My only caution for that. Actually, now I forgot. What was it again?
My don't was don't. The information you're getting right now is don't wrap that and put it under the tree. You know what?
Yes.
Just it's part of your shopping list. Maybe it's part of your. I can't wait for Christmas. But by the time Christmas gets around, you bought Grandpa something else. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying with the information today. Don't wrap it. Don't put it under the tree yet. Just listen. Enjoy this time of year.
Yes, exactly.
And part of that don't is, and I mean from everyone. From coach speak, player speak. It just right now doesn't matter.
Unless they're hurt and or not practicing,
and even that's major injuries.
Right.
Major injuries we know. They'll tell us. So that's what I know. All right, give me another. We're trying to keep these a little shorter. Give me another quick do and don't for yourself that might help a new fantasy player, or help me help. Hell, I need help.
I would say that for dues, and this is another one that probably a lot of folks say, that once you get into a league, not only figure out your league settings. Folks always say that know your league and all that, but I would like to say take it a step further. Knowing your league is not necessarily just knowing that, I'm playing on ESPN and it's going to be PPR and we've got bonuses and all that. Get to know your drafters. Get to know the people that you're playing with.
Sure. That's a little harder in a new league if you don't know anybody. Sure. That's the advantage of leagues where you've been in for a while. You kind of learn that. Right. I agree. Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's what I do.
You can find out a lot about where you're at just from asking folks basic questions. I'm not saying that, hey, who's your favorite team, or what player you're going to be going for. It doesn't have to be that specific. It could just be like, hey, how long have you been doing fantasy?
And
just
especially
just from
I mean, I'll throw another tip into there into what your do is because it would be similar to one of my dues down the list we're running into, and that is, you know what? If you have contact with people in this league, let's say it's a new neighborhood league, and you know half the people and half you don't, but you know what? Don't be afraid to contact someone and again, kind of you don't have to be out front and just say, hey, I'm trying to figure out what you're going to be drafting, so why don't you come mock draft with me? No, you call and say, hey, I found this website where we can mock draft together. Would you want to get on there and we can do it? It'd be kind of cool. You know what? People would go, I didn't even know you can do that. How do you mock draft? So, trust me, you mock draft with a person or two in your league, pay attention, pay attention to who they pick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a lot of tells, as we like to say in the poker world, about how folks are going to draft, and you can find out a lot of those things just from doing something like you just suggested, or again just asking basic questions. How long have you been playing fantasy football? I've been playing it for 10 years. I've been playing it for 2 years. This is my first year. I mean, just for that answer alone can kind of let you know what you can expect from them. Are they just going to follow ADP suggestions? Or do you think that they've done the research and might make some picks that might be, a little bit more from a savvy owner?
Or they'll say, I've never played fantasy, but I love Pittsburgh Steelers. I have 14 terrible towels. Well, you know what? That'll give you some information. Well, give me a quick
don't. I would say in terms of a don't, I would say don't get into when it comes to playing in paid leagues, don't get into a league that you're not comfortable with a buy-in. It's the same thing like poker. If you're not capable of playing at, let's say, a $1, $2 table, but you're more comfortable playing at a 2-cent, 4-cent table, don't make that jump on your own. Play in something that's more comfortable for you. Once money starts to get involved, you can see the level of competitiveness start to drastically increase with the folks in your league. And just stay in your area.
Sure.
If you like playing for $5, $10, $20, stay comfortable and just stay in your lane and have fun with it. But if somebody were to ask you, hey man, I've got a family league and it's $100. You want to join? Don't do it.
Right. If $100 is out of your realm, right.
If that's out of your realm and you don't feel comfortable playing that game, then you shouldn't be playing that game in the first place.
Right. I agree. That's a good one. Table selection, that's kind of in poker. Table selection, in fantasy, it's game selection. And like you said, not the sites, it's who you're playing against and what you're doing. So
100%.
All right. I'll agree with that one. A couple that we've kind of already touched the base, obviously my do is a podcast list. You know what? Same thing. You have your Twitter account, set up a podcast. Some of you may or may not even know what a podcast is, and I'm saying that obviously we were a podcast, mainly radio the first time. Now we're on YouTube, so it's a little different. Maybe somebody doesn't, but you know what? Every cell phone these days has a pod catcher where you can download shows, and obviously one of the some of the shows you can download are fantasy shows. Pick, choose, listen to one or two, get an idea if you like the person. So that's the first thing I would tell you. Now here's the second thing, or my don't, and it's kind of the opposite of what I just said. This is the time of year where I have a long list of fantasy podcasts I listen to. Once the season gets closer and closer, I start weeding out more and more of the entertainment ones, the ones that are a little more fluffy. And I'm not going to say they're bad ones. They're ones that I'll listen to all year round. They're ones that I'll do stuff, but I slowly this time of year start funneling. So technically my don't is a do, which my don't is, what you need to start doing is start weeding out some of those podcasts that are going to waste your time. You need to start putting the podcasts that are, and believe it or not, my big thing is me and Chris right now are just a weekly podcast. I weed out weekly podcasts. I want information daily. And once I see a date on a podcast, if I'm 2 days past and didn't get time to listen, I wipe it off. I don't even listen. It's just not, it's just not worth listening to. I started a podcast this morning, and the first thing they were talking about is the Jets not having their quarterback signed. He already signed. As soon as they start talking that, I swipe usually. I'm done. I want up-to-date information this time of year. Out-of-date fantasy information can make you lose in a league. You need the most up-to-date stuff. So my do is start podcast listening. my don't, which is a do, is then filter your podcast this time of year for the ones that are going to help you the most during the season. That way the information, especially if you're not like me, I can listen most of the day. If you don't have that option, and you really just have an hour or so commuting time total, you know what, find the ones you like. And hopefully me and Chris are going to only be on an hour, maybe two. We haven't decided. Hey, hopefully we get maybe time that we can do another short show during the week to keep you a little more updated. But, you know, some of the information we hope to give you is where to be listening, not the information they're going to give you. But, you know, as a fan, I'm going to tell you, hey, this is somebody you need to be listening to the next couple of weeks. He's up to date. He's on top of it. So those are my do's and don'ts. Do you have a couple more quick ones?
No, not that I can think of. I mean, I think that's about it.
Then I'm going to give you the two things. Another do is mock drafting. You can't do enough mock draft this time of year. So do your mock drafting. There's multiple websites. There's multiple. If you look, they're free, which is going to go to my don't. My don't is, if you're a first-time fantasy player, I've wasted a lot of money, and I'm going to use the word paywall. Some people won't know what that means, and that means it's a website where you have to pay to get information.
Mm-hmm.
I pay information on multiple sites. It's good information. I enjoy it. But I have filtered it. I have wasted a lot of money on paywall information that did not help my fantasy game. So what I would tell a first-time person is go to a lot of websites. Don't pay for anything at first. Study it, enjoy it, get the information you can before you start dropping your $50, $60, $70. Some of these sites are $12 a month. So don't pay for the paywall first. Take advantage of the free things. Take advantage of a lot of websites like Fantasy Pros. If you're just running one team, if you're a first-time user, Fantasy Pros, without any cost, will help you manage one team and still get quite a bit of information. Don't pay that paywall money until you are more educated on how to even use the information you paid for. I've wasted a lot of money over the years paying for stuff and realized, you know, it just was either over my head or I could have got it free somewhere else or whatever. You know, that money saved is money you can buy into another league next year or whatever. So do mocks. There's a lot of mock sites out there that are free. There's also some sites that mocking costs money, and that's fine. There are some good ones, but you know, my don't is right now, if you're a first time beginner, especially this time of year, you have a few months before you go, man, I really want some more information from this website. Then join, you know, most of them you join, get you through the football season. Some of them are annual. So, you know, that's one of my don'ts for a new fantasy player. Slow down on the paywall, slow down on paying the money until you're confident that the information you're going to pay for is going to be valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there are a lot of websites that I know they want to generate some money. They want to get fresh content out there for folks, but the quality of that content might be a little iffy. So until you can trust that website, it's hard for you to put some money down on it. So do as much research as you possibly can on the free side, like you just said, and then make that investment afterwards.
Right. And tweet us. Tweet me and Chris. We'll tell you if we've used it before. We'll give you our honest opinion. We don't get paid by anybody. We're not selling mattresses or jeans or you know, delivery boxes to your door for food. We're doing this for fun. Me and Chris are doing this, you know, for a few listeners and ourselves, really. So, you know, if you tweet us or send us some information, you know, we'll let you know. But I'm just saying, there's enough free information out there. If you have, if your tweet deck is set up or your Twitter account set up pretty good, you have a few decent podcasts, then the paywall, you'll learn enough information that you'll get an idea of what you need to do. So
most definitely,
you know, that's the thing. And then another don't that goes along with mock drafting, which a lot of people that are beginners don't understand, is don't believe the rating of the team you just drafted. That rating system is based on just total ADP and draft picks. It really has nothing to do with what the team's really going to do in the regular season. And I hear that a lot with people who mock draft. They're like, every time I mock draft, I only get 69, you know, or score of 82 when I do it, you know, the way you guys recommend. But if I just take the number one guy, I get a 97. Yeah, but the team might suck. That's the point.
Exactly.
Those ratings are just there for, I don't know. I'm assuming they're there to make you mock again, to try to beat it. I don't know that.
I don't know.
I just, my point is I have drafted what I would consider a pretty good team, and I get a 71. I have, you just follow certain things, and it is, if you draft top players at every position, it's going to be high rated, but that doesn't mean value. That doesn't mean, it's a game of fantasy. You're going to make some moves. You're going to draft a few things a little different. So,
right.
I'm just saying those rating things are just kind of, they're guidelines. They're nothing too much. So we will have to do this again, because we didn't even get into what I had another list of do's, some actual podcasts, some apps, some websites. Those are a little more detailed, where I was just general in that. We'll get to that here in a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe we'll do that next week, get into a few actual apps, podcasts and stuff for people to download and use so they can follow things. Because as news heats up this time of year, you got to have some kind of app that will keep you up to date. There's a lot of apps out there that give you announcements and breaking news. So that's kind of important. Maybe we'll get into that. I also had a note here, thinking if we had enough time, and maybe we'll do in the next week or two, I want to get into just an idea of what your top number twos are. And if you know what I mean by that, I mean, on certain teams, who's your best number two? If you have to get a number two running back on a team, what one are you looking at? If you have to get a number one or a number two wide receiver on a team, so kind of in the future, we'll look at, some of the best number twos. Right now you can tune into a lot of podcasts. Everyone's telling you who the number ones are. Everyone's telling you, this and this. You know what? It's grabbing that number two that pays off in your flex, or the number two that pays off.
Sure.
Because that number two becomes the number one in week 3, those type things. So in the future, we'll probably go there maybe next week, where we'll talk about, some of the better number twos in the league. And we'll talk about some apps and websites and everything for the people to help them out. So, all right. I had fun. Our first YouTube. Like I said, I have no idea if we went out. It says live. It says we're broadcasting. Who knows? So if you're watching this later on, then comment on the thing below. Leave. Again, I have no idea what that even does. But I just know every time I watch something, they're always pointing at stuff. So I hope you enjoyed that. The people on Spreaker, the regular audio listeners, thanks for being here. Chris, let me know. You got a minute or two if you have any updated information. Otherwise, where can people get a hold of you? And if they want to have ask a question or read your articles.
Absolutely. There's no updated news that I can think of right now. I would say this for the folks that are watching and do have Twitter. One account that you should follow if you're on Twitter right now. It's this. The handle is @32beatwriters. So it's @32, the number 32 beat writers, and it's in a semblance of. They get all of the camp news. They're showing videos. They're retweeting some of the news folks from
the local link out after the show?
Yeah, sure I can. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Right. I would say that anybody that follows that particular link, you'll get access to all the most up-to-date news, like when Vance McDonald got hurt during camp and then he had to get the card out for him. It was up on there within minutes. I mean, so they're going through and looking for everything, local beat writers, national reporters, everything, coach videos, all that stuff. So I would highly recommend that for something.
And we'll bring a few of those next week. Next week, our show's going to be that kind of stuff. So next week we'll bring that too, but definitely tweet that out after the show. So people that are following this, and if I learn how to, maybe I'll put that
somewhere
down,
over here,
right down below that
up here in the corner.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The odds are it won't be there, but hell, I'm going to point down anyway, just because that's where it may be. So any articles current?
I actually had an article on QB strength, the schedule that came out I had a weather article that just came out on weather impacts, like for fantasy football games, like that came out last week.
Okay.
I have an overvalued running backs piece that should be coming up here soon, and then I have a 12-team PPR mock draft that just dropped for Fantrax that came out over the weekend. So yeah, I have a few things that have been coming out over the last week or so.
Give your Twitter account one more time.
At Chris Allen FFWX.
All right. I am Easy Kill at afantasyfan. So you can tweet me there, or just afantasyfan@gmail.com if you want to shoot an email. Had a blast tonight. Had fun. Always enjoy getting together and chatting random fantasy stuff. So I appreciate y'all being there. Again, I hope you enjoyed our YouTube experiment, and hopefully we'll do it in the future if it worked or if we don't get kicked off. So I appreciate it. Everybody, say goodnight.